The experts that best communicate their culture and their vision to their potential clients are those entrepreneurs that we remember. I'm Shelby Jo Long with the Expertise Podcast, and here we explore the stories of those entrepreneurs to inspire you to think about how you can monetize your expertise. Hi, I'm Shelby Jo Long Hammond. Welcome to the podcast interview today. I'm excited to interview a member of Rogue Publishing Partners today, also about his service, but I'm also excited to learn a little bit more of his background and understand how all of these things can come together to create a very fulfilling business. So I'm here to introduce David Wolf today. David is in audio production. I'll let him talk about his business and what he does and the comprehensive overview of his business, but then we'll get into the business story and his brand, and just so we can learn more about him. So David, introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey, Shelby, how are you? Great to be with you today. Thanks for having me on. So yes, I am David Wolf. I am the CEO and founder of a company, a little virtual company called Audiovita Studios. We are at the core an audio production company that produces audiobooks and podcasts, sort of two different sides to our business. And I come from a long sort of history of producing music for radio, television, and film, and then did a little career veer for a few years when I turned 40, which is about 20 minutes ago, and then came back and forged a wonderful team of producers, editors, audio editors, voice talent, and of course the people that we serve, the clients or the authors or publishers on the audiobook side. So it's that's in the nuts. That's the quick version.
The quick version. Nice to. You have such a great radio voice. I love interviewing people with great radio voice.
I'll say something about that. It took some time for me because I was always in the producer producing other people doing singing. Usually it was usually musical, but I would never used my voice per se. But I got into because of the nature of the work I did, I had to do some demos and I had to sometimes add my voice. And then I had my own podcast, and that's really how I legged into the podcast production space called Small Biz America. I probably did about 300 episodes between 2005 and, it was early 2005 to 2010. So I learned, and I ran it by other people, and it started out, I was a little too breathy. And, then gradually I got into, learning how to breathe better. So I don't consider myself on-air talent, but I've done a lot of this stuff, and I do a few voiceovers for our company as well. So I get by.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a lot of fun. Just speaking to, and for those in the background that don't know and that are listening that don't know my background, I teach communication studies. And so I teach speaking and it's hard to teach charisma, but you have to draw out that charisma when you're speaking to keep attention of the audience, to create that emotional connection. And I think that's so important in the podcast space, to create a space where people feel comfortable and they can show their personalities. And I think that's it. It is a skill and it is an art form because it's all about connecting with the audience. So
it's so true. I tell so we have two different ways we produce audiobooks. One way is we have a casting team and they go out and find professional voiceover talent. And these are actors that are used to working on mic. They know how to do this. They know how to crawl into a character and really take it on. But we also, the other way we do it is we remotely record authors doing their own read when it's typically nonfiction, and they're the voice of the brand, they're the connectivity. So this is exactly what I say. It's not about being an expert voiceover in this instance. It's really more about connecting to the audience with your heart in an authentic way. And our producers work with them in real time to help tease that performance out of them, because it's sometimes many of us, when we start reading from a manuscript, we go into a different headspace, a different voice, a different tone, different cadence, and it doesn't feel natural and connecting anymore. So that's what our producers help our folks do.
That's so great. So important, especially with I just want to talk about podcasting for a little bit. Sure. Like you've been in podcasting space from the early days of it in 2005.
Right. So, I know, right?
But the podcasting has exploded. Can you just talk about how that industry has grown and changed, and what kind of opportunities that provides for authors and for business owners that want to use podcasts as a lead generation, that type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the core of podcasting, I've always felt It started out, I think, a little bit more as a journalistic platform for people because we didn't quite know what it was going to do. When I started podcasting, I had no or ROI or business model at all in my mind. And it was a foolish moment. I was just doing it really as a hobby, but it was business people that I was interviewing. But it was before the industry had really matured in terms of dynamic ad insertion, which is one way you can make money. If I were a business consultant, it would have made sense for me to invite CEOs on to directly monetize the guests I was bringing on. So the medium has become more sophisticated from the standpoint of being able to monetize it. And also formatically, we're now, whereas then it was an intro, maybe an interview and go. Now it's a much more, all kinds of podcasts are coming out. For the business podcaster, even there, you can do interesting things like a pull quote in front from the interview, and then the music kicks, and then you turn a corner, and then you surprise the listener with a gamification, and then you go. There are things you can do formatically to keep people engaged that we weren't thinking about in the good old days, right? And so there's that. There are a lot more podcast platforms that are available for the consumption and downloading and streaming of content. At the time, it was just Apple, and that was really the only one. Now, you've got Spotify and Stitcher and iHeartRadio and TuneIn and Amazon and Google, and YouTube is doing support for podcasts. And that's the next phase, is that this video thing has opened up. So I think you're using video here. For the longest time, we were producing podcasts without even thinking about the video. It was there, but it wasn't being recorded. Now we can shoot 1080 video remotely. And whether it's through Zoom, we use a different platform called Squadcast, which can shoot 1080. And we're using those videos either for Instagram and other types of promotions for our clients, or they're just throwing them on YouTube as they are. So the line between audio podcasting and video podcasting is very much blurred now as well. So those are a few themes that I've observed, aside from the fact that there are a lot more podcasts than there were then.
Absolutely. So, I don't know what the number is, but I think it's this exorbitant number.
I just looked at that. It's about 5.5 million series and some ridiculous number of episodes. I think it's a 5.5 million now. I hope I'm right. Somebody will fact check me on that, but yeah.
That's it. Well, I no fact check here, but I
you're not going to call me out on this, but yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of podcasts.
It's a lot of podcasts. Yeah, that's interesting for me as a business owner. I'm a business consultant. It's good to have a space. I love talking to people. I think you get to a real heart of what their brand is and what their story is. And I think that's an important emotional connection for clients to make for businesses to make with their clients. So I like that part about it. But then you can reuse things, like you could have your podcast here and on YouTube. So an opportunity to multi-use that content and to make it really a significant part of your business.
Totally. I mean, you can chop longer episodes into small bits and put them on YouTube or Instagram or wherever you want to be to tease people into the work you're doing or the episode itself. I'm sorry if I interrupted there.
No.
You were in a flow. Okay.
I was, but no, that's absolutely right. You can cut things up and you can have pieces and the actual production of it, which is what you help people with, is to make it more entertaining, other than just here's a podcast, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're that's exactly right, Shelby. I mean, we take a lot of care in the music, into the design of the intros and the outros. Sometimes we build in product promotions and sort of, you might call them mini commercials, as a part of it, or maybe better called call to action moments inside the intros and outros for our clients. Sometimes there's a mid-roll that we bake into the show so that there's a little, and now we're going to talk about Shelby's business, and you kind of break away and then you come back with the rest of the interview. So there's things we try to do. Again, this is back to that format thing. Want to take the listener on a journey.
Absolutely.
So
the listening journey, all of that.
Right.
That brings me to what I was thinking about initially, like with all that content out there and all of those options.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for people to stand out in all of that noise and to be the podcast that people want to listen to?
Well, that's a secret sauce question, and I wish I had an easy answer for it. I think you need to be brave. You need to be daring with the format. I think maybe also sometimes with the message. Authenticity and connectivity is obviously a part of this. And you need to really be self-promoting. You need to, it's not a build it and they were come, just like websites were once a day. I mean, once upon a time. I mean, any business, you have to drive traffic to you and not be afraid to be proactive about that, appearing on other people's shows. Some of the things we've already mentioned, like chopping up your show into little videos and sending them out wherever you are on Instagram and other places, so that you're in front of the audience, fishing where the fish are. The tipping point part of your question is harder to take, because I mean, I haven't created a hit podcast on that massive scale like a Joe Rogan. So I can't really say what that is. And I don't even know that if you were to ask him, he could tell you exactly what helped him break out. I think it's somewhat mysterious. But if you roll that back and you're brave and you're authentic and you're real and you're creative with what you're doing, the chances of it breaking through are more, the likelihood is greater.
Yeah.
That's my sense about it.
Yeah.
Other than the tactical things you can do.
Yeah. Lots of things you can do. So talk to me. I know a little bit about your history with music production and all that. Can you give us a little background to what inspired you to get into this audio space?
So I have a photo that says some of this. So, I mean, you talk about history. This is ancient history, but this is me at 6 years old at my uncle's wedding, fascinated with a microphone.
Fascinated.
So I became a drummer, and I played a lot of jazz and fusion and rock and roll. I grew up in Chicago. There's a very vibrant music scene there. So I was very much a player of music. And I was studying percussion and eventually got interested, or I should say I got a little bit, the drums couldn't contain me, shall we say. So I started to learn how to write music and how to orchestrate and how to film score. And I learned that business. They used to call it, maybe they still in the jingle business in Chicago. So we were working on, I got an apprenticeship with one of the kings of jingles in Chicago. And we worked with major ad agencies on campaigns like Marlboro cigarettes and McDonald's and other well-known brands. When I was in my early 20s, and learned the business, everything from how to synchronize music to picture, which, is a pretty, it's a nuanced art form, film scoring really, to doing radio and songwriting and how to write a simple jingle back in, there are certain instances where people actually still sing about products, although that's somewhat dated in its approach. But then also sound design and some of the other elements that go into more contemporary approaches to doing music for advertising and film. And eventually, when I got married in '85, we moved to Dallas, Texas, and formed a company called Cry Wolf Music. Ultimately, I ran that with my wife together. She ran the front office. We had a small in-house staff, and then we were using all the great musicians in the Dallas metro area to create. I would write and produce these sessions, so I'd have 3 or 4 sessions a week, rather. And we were doing music for Chuck E. Cheese International, the animated restaurant characters in those restaurants. Yeah. I worked on other children's, notably Barney the Dinosaur. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't say that while I'm in public, but I was one of the music producers on that show, and we did a lot of work with them in audio and in video. Album work, songwriting. That was a real exercise in simplicity. Most of the work we were doing, though, was in commercials. So it was everything from Embassy Suites hotels to McDonald's to Pepsi to Southwest Airlines. That was really the zone of where I was. And in that world, I was the creative generator. So in other words, it wasn't a scalable business. I had to write the music in order for the business to be viable. And so after I hit 40, I recognized that I needed to kind of explore the business of business. And so I transformed we closed down the music business somewhat slowly. I did a business turnaround in a completely different industry. It wasn't pretty. It took about 8 years to get through it. And I ran it as the CEO for about that long. And we were a commercial bakery. So very different than what I was doing. I was able to apply some of my skills, marketing wise, having been around that world, but this was 30 employees, 24/7 business, delivering wholesale and retail. And we did artisan breads and bagels in the greater New Mexican or Albuquerque, Santa Fe market. So I ran that for 8 years and then exited that and sold it to my brother, and really wanted to get back to something in the music or audio production domain. And I just started launching into podcasting. Actually, while I was still running that business, I started doing it. And I had this show called Small Business America, and gradually said, hey, can you help me with my podcast? And then I got one client. And then, so I was doing it all myself up until about 5 years ago. And then I realized that I needed help. So I brought in a VA, and she's now a partner and COO in the company. Mm-hmm. And from there, we established a department called podcasting, part of Audiovita. And then the audiobook side, and really structured the business around those two deliverables, now video as well, as we've talked about. So that's the kind of the quick evolutionary story of me in the business, moving from music to now in a role where I'm still orchestrating, but I'm orchestrating people instead of notes. So
right.
So
still in that creative space, able to be in the CEO creator. Absolutely. That's great. Mm-hmm. Great to learn a little bit about the history. I didn't know about the bakery piece. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a really out there part of it, because it's so different than anything. This was a business that had bankrupt. It was started by a cousin of mine, and it was called Wolf's Bagels. And it blew up. There was a story where the business wasn't survivable for a variety of reasons, which I had to engineer around and out of for new loans and new banking and new customers. Yeah. And, I had to basically bring it up from bankruptcy court from the dead we grew it back to about 1.2 million. So it was still a small business, but I really learned it's a lot about business during that period. So sure. It was productive for me that way.
Well, that's good. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. And you circled around and came back to your passion. So, and now you have a pretty decent business out of it. So very satisfying. Go ahead. You had a question.
I
was going to ask, what percentage of your business is more of the audiobooks and podcasts? Is there a breakdown of that?
Yeah. The breakdown tends to be 2/3 audiobooks and 1/3 podcasting. And I'll say all of that. It's a changing, undulating, dynamic market. Everything is moving very quickly, certainly with podcasting, but also in the publishing and audiobook markets. You've got companies buying companies that are buying networks the distribution models are changing very quickly. There's a commoditization happening with podcasting, and maybe to some extent audiobooks, but to a lesser degree, where you can get podcasts DIY. You can go out to name your platform and do it yourself. It may or may not be necessary to hire a company like ours that does sort of what I'll call up level, a little bit more broadcast quality. You can still get your message out in a really raw way. And some people really dig that. So there's no certainty. As much as you'd like to say this is a durable business that may go on forever, there is always a corner that's going to turn, or something that's going to change. AI, some of the voice generation with AI is absolutely phenomenal. You can, if you're trained, or maybe even not so trained, you can hear that there are patterns in it, and it's not exactly a human. It's a little too perfect, blah, blah, blah. But it's really, really good. And like, if you've been watching the news with deep fake videos of Tom Cruise and this and that, the same is happening in audio, where they can clone a voice and it sounds really, really good. And so how does that impact talent in this market? How does that impact us as a production company that coaches people reading? Now you just take the script and go zing and throw it in, and then the computer spits it out. And then you got to dial it in a little bit. But and that is like horse and carriage going to Henry Ford kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I remain healthily paranoid, if there's such a thing.
I understandably so, and things change so quickly. So, but I don't know. I don't think there's anything that can replace that authenticity, though.
Yeah, we used to have these conversations as a drummer originally about the drum machines. The drummers would sit around and say, "Oh, I don't think I'll ever get a gig again." And it never happened because it's not the same. So. Exactly.
Yeah. Doesn't replace the real thing. So I think a lot of businesses are going through that, particularly post-pandemic, when they're recreating the human experience, and that's becoming a skill and an art form that they need to have in their business. And I think that's going to be the differentiator.
Oh yeah. It's like, remember what it's like to actually shake someone's hand and not wear a mask and be in a room and actually have, the vibe. We're all living. I roll from Z. So do you. I'll bet we roll from Zoom to Zoom every day now. And so to a certain extent, this has become now integrated, into everything. And then when you go somewhere, it's like a big deal. If you can get there without you losing your luggage, that is. Right.
So talk to me a little bit about the audiobooks trajectory. Have you seen a massive increase in that? Because
Yes.
I have a subscription to Audible, so like I
Yep.
listen to a lot of audiobooks. I'm sure it's been
Yep.
similar to that. And now with my own book
Yeah.
coming out in the next couple of weeks, and
Yeah.
I'm going to do an audiobook for sure. So
Beautiful. So the thing about all of this is audio consumption has been growing because I think there are a few things driving it. One is an actual or perceived scarcity of time.
Mhm.
That's part of it. People just don't feel like they have time to sit and read. They'd rather be multitasking, driving, walking the dog, whatever, doing something while they consume the content. And a whole new market in audiobooks has been unlocked for authors where their book wouldn't have been consumed unless it was available as audio. And this is a little bit of my spiel when I talk to people that are considering audio, the argument to do it. But it's also on the podcast side. Audio consumption is up because people want to do more than one thing at a time, which is, I don't know if it's good news or bad news, but it's a behavioral shift that is undeniably happening. And we're lowly, folks like me that produce and write are leaning into it. The other thing is that people process information differently. And I think there are people out there that don't read as well as they listen, or don't listen as well as they read. And there are different advantages to both ways of consuming content. And so the thought is now give it to folks on the consumer side in as many ways as possible. And it's kind of that Burger King line, have it your way. Let them decide how they want to do it. So constantly,
Right.
if you're promoting the audiobook, you're also promoting your print and your ebook too. So it's really just this platform of content that's available in different ways for a broader reach. But it is totally exploding, no question.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's great to have all that information. But then the question for all marketers is, how do I make my stuff stand out? So that's which is the $1 million.
It's the question we get asked all the time. And, it's the one that we say, well, we've got these partners that are in the social media space that really specialize in that in a way that we don't, although we can produce some of the assets. They'll help you program it, right. Operationalize that in a scheduled way. We've dabbled in that, but we recognize that we're better off staying in our lane and producing the content rather than, dealing with those mechanics. But there are businesses out there that do nothing but help the author, help the podcaster get found. It's not easy.
No, it's challenging for authors, for businesses, for everybody. So there's no one answer to how you can do it. So there's a lot of different ways.
Yeah, Shelby, that's true.
David, how can our audience find you?
So easiest way is www.audiovita.com. That's AUDIVITA.com. The website's there. That gives you there's a contact page. You can also send me an email at dwolf@audivita.com. And those are the two ways to reach me. I'm on LinkedIn constantly. We do a lot of work there, just, certainly to find new folks that we want to work with and that are a good fit for us. So you can find me there as well.
That's how we met, on LinkedIn.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's crazy. And now, exciting to say, I'll make sure all of your links and all of your contact information is in the YouTube channel. But I'm excited that you're part of Rogue Publishing Partners. I think what your business provides is tremendous. It's a tremendous resource for authors that publish their books. You and I are going to be talking very soon about my book. So it just seems like a very nice move forward for
I'm already seeing the benefits of being part of the Rogue Publishing Partners infrastructure in the way of people are needing what we do, and it's wonderful. And then I've tried to at the meetings we have, and I really try to contribute in ways that I hope will help whoever's on the call. So it's been a nice energy exchange, let's say.
It has been, and it will just continue to grow and be an important, really very important resource for independent authors that don't know what the solutions are, but we can help bring them the solution.
Yeah.
And I'm excited that you're part of that structure, because there's multiple ways to stand out in this business, and that the more access we have and the more we can know about those things, then the better it is for the clients. So
exactly.
Yeah. Well, David, any final thoughts before we leave today?
No, I'm grateful for being here, and I love talking about the work we do. Maybe to a lesser degree, I love talking about my history. but but it's there, and it helps bring, like all of us, we all have a story that led us, these micro decisions that lead us to where we are now. So they're always fascinating stories to listen to, and I guess it gets me kind of back in touch with, oh, that's what I do. It's fun, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about what we do, and I hope that folks can come away with something that was beneficial for them at whatever level that is.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's delightful to hear some of your story and your background and your music background and all that, and also great to hear about where the business is and where it's going and what solutions you can provide for authors. So Thanks, thank you again for coming on the podcast. And I look forward to speaking with the audience next time when we talk to another professional that has created a business out of their expertise to provide solutions to you business owners. Talk to you next time.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Expertise Podcast and hope you're inspired to think about how to further monetize the expertise and the processes that you have in your own business. See you next time.